All right, so first of all, welcome. Right, it's been about a month or two since we got together. We're trying out something new, so welcome to Remo as well. So we'll be doing all of the presentations today in here, and then afterwards, make sure you stick around because we then will be switching over to some live virtual networking. It's a video networking, so it's a really cool feature of Remo. We can do it all in one place. So please stick around to say hi. All right, after that, we're going to do a little community spotlight and some Boston Tug news. And then we're going to jump into our presenters. So we've got lots of great stuff today. Like I said, we've got Rick Amicucci and Jagadeesh Malina from OSI Digital. They're going to talk about embedding Tableau into Salesforce. We've got Purva Sawant from Vestmark here in Boston. And she's going to talk about how to do that career switch as an analyst using Tableau. We've got Sedale McCall, one of our 2020 Tableau public featured authors, and he'll be talking about how to define Viz what you love. And then we've got Jim Dehner. He's going to give us his presentation, his top 5 building blocks on the journey from Excel to Tableau. A Tableau ambassador, powerhouse on the forums, and owner at Marketing Analytics LLC. Right, and then after that, we'll wrap it up and start the virtual networking. So some community spotlight news. We've got quite a few things going on since our last meeting. We've had 2 Viz of the Days from the Boston area. We had Michelle Freeman in December, and we had Brian Moore back in November. So 2 gorgeous Vizes. If you guys aren't following them, number 1, why? Number 2, please go do that. Right, they've got incredible stuff, and they're pounding out great work all the time. Go to Tableau Public, follow those guys for sure. Speaking of, we've also got Jackie Moore. She was selected as one of the Tableau Public featured authors. Same thing, go follow her, great work. And then the last time we met, this was when the team introduced me as one of the co-leads, and Kate Brown was one of the co-leads, and so I stepped up to take her space. And so now we know what Kate is choosing to do in her new free time, right? She doesn't stay idle long. She has joined the Sports Viz Sunday group. So everyone, make sure you find Kate, wish her good luck. And if you do any sports related Vizes, make sure you get them on Twitter, tag Sports Viz Sunday. It's a great initiative and it's really fun. Kate's an avid golfer, so this is a great space for her. I'm really glad to see her working in this group now. Next, some sad news, sort of. We've got one of our great longtime co-leads, Dustin Cabral, is moving on. So he's stepping down as one of the leads. And so let me turn it over to Mike to him for a second.
Sure. Thanks, John. I appreciate that. And I'm going to keep it brief because I know we have a packed day. But yep, I'm moving on from Boston Tug leadership, but I made sure that we have some really, really amazing people supporting the group before I left, and they're already doing a tremendous job. And I'm looking forward to coming back and just doing a couple speaking roles here and there. But I'm not going to disappear. I'm still going to be obviously in New England. I just pasted in some contact information, so if you guys want to hit me up on Twitter, LinkedIn, my new website, Udemy, any of those. Vastly appreciated, but can't thank everybody enough for supporting me and the group. So I'll see you guys around, but I really appreciate everything.
All right, thank you, Dustin, and thank you for all you've done for this group. Sure. Right, I first met Dustin maybe a year or 2 ago. He came in and did the proof of concept when we were installing Tableau at our company, and his work just blew me away. Right, I've always been in awe of Dustin, and he's as nice a guy as he is talented in Tableau. So huge loss. But like he said, he'll be around, and absolutely check out his course on Udemy, however the hell you say it. All right. Thanks, Dustin.
See ya.
All right. So I wanted to quickly touch on this. We've got sort of a data education opportunity that Tableau is throwing out there. So they're introducing their data literacy for all program. So this, if you're familiar with their e-learning platform, this is actually how I got up to speed and got up to speed very quickly with Tableau, their core e-learning platform. I believe this is sort of a scaled down version of this. It is an e-learning platform, and they're giving this portion of it away for free. And so this is 5+ hours of training, good fundamental concepts, no matter what your skill level is. Those are always worth revisiting. So we've got the link down at the bottom. I'll throw it in the chat after this, but this is a good thing to take a look at. It's got to be worth your time. 5 hours of fundamental training, free from Tableau. All right. And some local news, right? We've got a data job opportunity that we wanted to throw out there. They have put this up for us to promote. So I'm happy to say that the Broad Institute in Cambridge, Mass. Is hiring. So they're hiring a senior people analyst. This is a heavy Tableau position from what I could tell in the listing. So I'll let you guys briefly read this, but I will also, same thing, I'll take the link there and I'll put that in the chat. Encourage you local individuals to take a look at it. I don't believe it's remote, right? So, but take a look. Good opportunity in front of us for those who are looking for a career change. All right, let's get to why you guys are here. Enough of me. So from OSI Digital, we have Rick Amicucci and Jagadeesh Malina, and they're going to tell us all about how they seamlessly embed Tableau into Salesforce. Right, so take it away, Rick and Jagadeesh.
Super, thank you, John, I appreciate it. I'm Rick Amicucci, I'm the Data Analytics Practice Director here at OSI Digital. I'll wait for the screen to come up here. Everyone see the screen? So I'm Rick Amicucci, as I said, Data Analytics Practice Director. I have Jagadeesh Malina, who's our Senior Data Analyst Architect, is going to be here with me presenting. So today, we're going to cover a couple items: power of embedding Tableau into Salesforce, what the value of embedded analytics is, what are the required skills. We're going to do a live demo, and some of the use cases that we're going to show are customer health scorecard and a pipeline management review. So next slide, Jagadeesh. So what is embedded analytics? It is the integration, oh, last screen there. John, did you take, there we go. So back one slide, Jagadeesh. So embedded analytics is the integration of analytic content and the capabilities within business process applications. These applications can be Salesforce, which we're going to talk about today. It could be SharePoint, it could be a custom web portal, or it could be Oracle EBS or any other platform. Analytics are being embedded in all kinds of software, from online shopping to smartwatches and to enterprise applications. The ecosystem as we know it today is changing. And with that, so is our relationship to analytics. Historically, analytics and BI have been treated as something separate, but increasingly, analytics are becoming more and more integral part of our software experiences. Embedded analytics allows users to spend less time in switching back and forth between different tools and applications, as they can be integrated into other platforms used. This allows users to spend more time on more essential tasks, increasing overall productivity. We call it insight in the moment, analytics embedded at the point of decision. So what is the value of embedded analytics? It improves experience. One slide ahead, Jagadeesh. It improves experience by providing targeted products and services, recommendations to your customers or subscribers. Not only does this improve customer experience, but it has been shown to decrease churn and lead to repeat sales and larger purchases. And when I was researching this webinar, I saw an article where Bain had reported that a 5% increase in customer satisfaction increases profits by more than 25%. So for example, when you're buying a house, you go to a site, it recommends neighborhood data, right? It makes me more apt to come back to that site. So what are the skills required to visual analytics? So we look at visual data analytics expertise. What you need there is the Tableau visual design best practices and implementation methodology, and of course, security and row level security experience. From the software development experience on the embedded platform, you need experience. So Salesforce or SharePoint or Portal, Java.net, Oracle EBS, whatever the platform is that you're embedding into. And lastly, system infrastructure. So it would be Windows, Linux. You need security, SAML, experience networks, VPN, all of those different services you need to understand. So you need all three of those. It's a triangle. If you're missing one of the legs of the triangle, it's not going to stand. So today we're going to demonstrate a couple different things. We're going to demonstrate the integration between Salesforce and Salesforce and Tableau. We're going to do it two different ways. One using Visual Force pages, and the other one using LWC, Lightning Web Components, where LWC is open source code that allows you to explore the source code, customize the behavior for your needs, and build expertise-ready web components on any platform, not just Salesforce. And this is source you can get on GitHub. We're going to show connectivity to multiple systems. We're going to be pulling data from Salesforce directly from an AP/AR system, from a survey system, from a ticketing system, or you can pull it from a phone system. And there's no extra steps required to access the data. And we're going to show real-time context-sensitive visual data analytics. So we're going to update data in Tableau or on a dashboard, and we'll see that it gets updated automatically in Salesforce. So, excuse me. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jagadeesh for the demo portion of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. My name is Jagadeesh Malina. I'm the Senior Data Analytics at OSI. So today, before I present about how we integrate Tableau with Salesforce, I would like to, tell you about what are the complications we currently have in order to integrate Tableau with Salesforce. So one major thing is we can connect to Salesforce, but the problem is it is not real time. That means whenever we connect Tableau with Salesforce, the data, we have to extract it and we can put a frequency, but it gives you a challenge of not being real time. The second challenge we have is since we do a lot of our analytics and a lot of our work on day-to-day operation on Salesforce, we sometimes doesn't only require one form of data. We need data, which is not from Salesforce, which is outside the Salesforce, and we want to understand and to the whole picture of that account or that customer in order to analyze that. The third thing which I would like to explain is whenever we see a dashboard, the dashboard doesn't only need to talk about hey, what's going on with that? It should not be just descriptive. It should be, do some action insight from that. So that means from the place where we observe something, we need to able to quickly take some action of it. So the presentation, the demonstration, which I'm going to do now, will cover all these three pieces. So let me, without wasting much time, let me switch to the demo right now. So there is a customer who came to us, who want to understand their customer attrition. They want to understand why there is a decline in the key customers. So they came to us, they asked that question to us. So what we did is we analyzed what are the key important factors that are required to analyze a customer. So we did our analysis, we did our descriptions and figure out what are the key metrics that could be valid in order to understand a customer. So something like open cases, missed SLA, AR aging, credit, and rating. You can see that the open cases, this information is coming from Salesforce directly. But, as we know that since we are integrating a Tableau dashboard between to the Salesforce space, and Tableau has the ability to connect to multiple data source platforms, we are bringing the AR aging element. That means we are bringing some external data source inside this one, the financial systems here, and able to analyze this one. So now you can see that as an example, as a representative, I came here. I want to understand, hey, what's happening with this customer? So all over the red indicates that the customer is not doing great. So like, for example, we look at the open cases. So as I told you that we want this application to be, very interactive, not just descriptive. So when we click on this one, immediately it will navigate you to a portion And you could see that what are the different cases. Just to switch you can see that right now we have like 12 cases open here, and you could see all the 12 cases listed up here. So, okay, so you could see that there is one order, and it is just a logistic issue, and we can, as a representative, we can just call them, try to fix that issue. So I'm just coming here, this issue has been resolved, and we have closed it, and we have saved this. So once we save this, when we come to this position, you could see that the 12 cases which was showing as red, it is going to turn yellow immediately. See how real-time our dashboard was able to integrate that. So how could we achieve this one? How did we achieve this one? So with the expertise we have in Tableau and Salesforce, we will really understand how this application can be worked out, how we can make this work. So what we have did is, so we kind of prepared a small daemon, that contains a code. So we know that we have JavaScript APIs that where we can pull data from Salesforce. But the problem is, if you use a JavaScript API or some sort of scripting APIs, there is a limit on that. But we understand the proper limitation of the Salesforce. And what we did is we use streaming API. There is an API. What it does is any operation or any changes that happens in the Salesforce, it is going to push the data onto the daemon. So our daemon is going to, so it's a small kind of application we designed. So it is nothing but a Python script, a script that kind of takes the data that is been sent by the streaming API, process it out, and push it into a database. And you can see that after pushing it to the database, it immediately gets reflected here. So the problem we had of extracting the data not being real time is been demolished, and you can see the data immediately getting reflected back onto the dashboard. That's how we were able to achieve the real time data flowing into the Salesforce. Now, due to this, one of the good advantage we're going to get is, like, we don't need to be seeing the false information onto the dashboard, and we don't need to go to the multiple places. So there are three things that we have covered here. One thing is being real time. Second thing is we were able to interact. That means this dashboard is not just descriptive. That means we were able to interact with this, go to a place where we can do some operation like we do in our day-to-day, and we can come back here and we can see the real-time information getting reflected here. So that is one of the cool feature of this dashboard. So this helped our customer to figure out what's going on with the customer and try to do quick insight before it. So I'll quickly go into another dashboard.
And Jagadeesh, real quick, sorry to interrupt, but the data for that dashboard is stored in Tableau, so you don't have to upload that data into Salesforce, thus increasing your storage costs with Salesforce. So all the data is stored in Tableau.
Exactly, that's correct. Thank you, Rick. So quickly, I want to show this dashboard. This dashboard is one of my favorite. I really love the way the information has been presented here. So this is like a snapshot that tells about, as a rep manager, what's really going on with my rep. I want to understand how my rep's doing. Sometimes, it is better to understand a problem and take some quick steps before it happens. So it really understand to do a bit of coaching with our reps in order to understand. So for example, there is one rep here, and we were able to see that. So these are different pieces of information coming from different places. Like we said, with the help of Tableau, we were able to use a single source of truth, like Tableau as a centralized source, and we don't need to pull data into our Salesforce here. So you could see what are the prospects, how they're doing. So sometimes we need to understand that, okay, as this rep, where is the problem? What's really happening with this guy? Okay, so you can see that when you go from one stage to another stage, he's taking more time in the age of, where we need to do some analysis and the proposal. A lot of opportunities have been used at this phase. So that's why you could see that, what is the percentage, what are the reasons associated with that. And, we also did some kind of predictive analysis. Like, for example, if this rep does in this way, whether he is going to reach the target or not, whether the quota assigned to him is going to be reached or not. So you could see that there is 99%, and there is a small calendar showing up with pink, with that shows that okay, if he follows the same pattern, when he is going to reach. So you could see that he's going to reach this quota on this time. So that way we will know that, okay, if we go in the same process, whether he's going to reach the target or not. So let me go and switch to myself. So I'm also acting like another rep here. So when I switch to myself, you could see that how much quota I have reached. And as I told you, this is very much customized, that our Tableau dashboards are able to tell where the problem. That's why you could see that for me, the problem was with the negotiation and closing, that I'm losing a lot of customers at this phase. And if I go in this way, if I do my business in the same way, what is the problem? Whether I'm going to reach my quota or not. So you could see that my Tableau dashboard immediately telling my rep manager that, hey, he's at 79. If he does the business in the same way, he is never going to reach it. So that's where you could see that he's not going to hit the target in the assigned fiscal year. So that's where you can do a little bit of coaching, little bit of understanding. And this whole dashboard was able to explain about where the problem is, what happens if we do the same way, and when we can take some action out of it. That way we can see where the problem associated with that rep and fix the problem. That's it. Thank you so much for giving this opportunity. I'll hand it over back.
All right, excellent. Thanks a lot, guys. Great presentation. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So next, we have Purva Sawant, and she's going to go ahead and share her screen and let us know about transitioning to using Tableau as an analyst.
Hello. Hi, John. Can you hear me?
Yes, I think you've just got the wrong screen, maybe. We're seeing...
No, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure that the screen is being shared.
Okay.
Do you see my presentation?
Yes.
Okay. So, all right. And I think everyone can hear me as well.
Is there a way to bring it into full screen, maybe?
Let me see. Is this better?
Yeah, I think so. Thanks.
All right. Right. So, hi everyone. I am Purva, and I am going to be presenting about my Tableau journey. Basically, how if you're looking to make a switch as an analyst, a career switch as an analyst, what I have done so far and what lies ahead of this. So, what I'm going to cover in this presentation is how it started for me, what my learning curve was, and how do I practice more, learning the tool, certifications, and also how to find a mentor. So I work at Westmark in Boston as a customer engineer. And as a part of my job, I have a lot of exposure to SQL Server, but I had very little exposure to data visualization or data analysis. Whatever little I did as a part of my current job, I've tried Click as one of the tools, but that's about it. But whatever, while making also a career switch or while looking for jobs, I discovered that Tableau was really the topmost tool for visualization. So that's where I ended up discovering Tableau. And as a part of the discovery, I'm like, okay, I found it, but how do I start learning or how do I start practicing this tool? And that's where, amongst all the other offerings that Tableau has, I discovered Tableau Public. So that's that is what led to a whole new world altogether. Basically, looking at what you could do with Tableau Public, create your own portfolio, display your own work, so that for potential employers they can come and look at your work, and based on that make a well-informed decision of what the candidate that they're going to interview looks like. So that's how my journey started with Tableau. So now we come to the learning curve. When I started looking at this tool, the first thing was, how do I start learning the basics and the ins and outs of this tool? I mean, the website has a lot of content. You can visit all the videos on the website, look at the videos, and it is a great tool for learning. But I needed something a little bit more, concrete in terms of structure and a little flow and definition. So that's when I started looking at a lot of books, Tableau books. And the one that I like personally and I use is Zen Master Ryan Sleeper's book, Practical Tableau. I really like the book because for several reasons. One is it has different sections, one on learning the tool, the technicalities of the tool, the different products that Tableau offers and how to use them or when to use them, and a lot of practical tips on how to create vizzes and what little pointers that you could add that will improve your viz and your story comes across very clearly. So this is one of the books that I really like, and I would recommend looking at it and going through it. So, but I'm sure there are many others available on Google and Google Books, but this is my personal favorite. So, I mean, learning is one part of the journey. Like, theoretical learning is great. You have a lot of content online. If you Google for Tableau videos, you'll find a lot of them on YouTube too. But at the end of the day, it's what you practice is what will help you, develop more your skill set. So practicing is one of the key elements of this whole journey. While I started looking at public data sets and started trying to figure out what's the best way to start practicing using this tool, I came across a Makeover Monday program. This program is run by Eva Murray and Andy Kriebel, and they are based in London. What they do is they provide a public data set every week, and then the data set has also a viz. What the participants have to do is look at the viz, identify what does not work with the viz or why the viz is not great, and either make suggestions to it or make your own one. At the end of the week, Andy and Eva they pick some of the vizes that have been submitted, and they review those and let the participants know what worked well, what did not work well. So this social program is a great learning opportunity and a great practice. And also the other benefit of this program is you end up building your portfolio. So, which is your Tableau public portfolio, which is a great way to approach employers or future prospects. So I would definitely recommend looking at the Makeover Monday program. And for more details, you can always go to Twitter and see there's a lot of information about the Makeover Monday program on Twitter. So I would recommend going there. Along with that, there are other programs that you can follow and try to practice, which are like Workout Wednesday, Iron Viz, the SDG Viz project, which Brian Moore and Jackie run. So the more you participate, the more easier it becomes for you to play with the tool and understand how to create better business and better stories out of the data. Okay, another way to learn Tableau is getting a certification. Like, Tableau offers various certifications. Some of them are the desktop certified associate, and professional certifications. A certification is a great way to learn the tool, and secondly, it's like a validation that you do when you approach employees. It's a validation that you do know something about the tool, or you are very familiar with the basics of the tool. So the Tableau website has a lot of information on what their certifications are, and what tools or what skills they're per se looking at for each certification. So again, it's a great way to learn the tool. And so, sorry. it's a great way to learn the tool, and also to have a certification is always great on your resume. So, and again, I would say Twitter is on Twitter, networking is another great way to find more feed on, more content on learning Tableau. Because once you start networking on the Twitter data fam, you find I found a lot of good content on Twitter through, following other users. So I definitely recommend getting onto Twitter and also getting a certification. I mean, I myself got certified in desktop. I'm desktop certified, and it's definitely helped me along the way. Okay, last but not the least, like, all of this prep is great if you're doing it yourself, but you definitely need somebody. I mean, I thought personally that I needed somebody who could, guide me along the way and tell me what I was doing was correct or was not correct, and if I need any improvements. So again, through the Twitter data family, I came across this mentoring meetup program that is run by Adam, Miko, and Vinod, and Mark and Emily. What this program does is basically you sign up as a mentee, and they pair you with a mentor who, when the both of you, if you like each other and would like to work together, then that's how the pairing is done. And mentors are people, again, who belong to this Tableau family, who have been using the tool for a long time, who've been working in the industry for a very long time, and are keen to, give back to the community. So, I mean, Adam paired me with my mentor, Ella Worsdale. She's based in England, Glossop, and she works as the head of information. I mean, Ella and I were paired last year, sometime mid last year, and that has been professionally a very good, the best thing that could have happened to me professionally. When I was paired with Ella as a mentor, we set clear goals as to, what I was looking for, and based on that, we started maneuvering our journey. So I was very clear that I want to make a career switch as an analyst, and that's what I'm looking for. That how do I improve my Tableau skills? How do I improve my portfolio, and what other skills I need to pick up in order to, make that possible switch. Working with her has been great because all the Makeover Monday program that I work through, I always send my submissions over to Ella. She reviews them and gives me great feedback, as to what improvements I could have done, what else, or what mistakes I've made, and why they are not right, or what effects they have, why it doesn't work. So this kind of personal guidance is really valuable. I mean, I can't stress on the importance of having this kind of guidance. And not just this, along with the Makeover Monday program, she also sets up, a lot of challenges, which are making me ready for what a real data analyst job looks like, because I do not have a background as a data analyst. So the kind of challenges she sets up for me are making me more and more ready for what a real data analyst job looks like. So, like, some of her challenges for me have been visualizing a data set with different charts, and figuring out why a particular chart works for the data set or why it does not work for a data set, or using personal data, working on it, making it, modifying it and making it ready for a visualization, and then visualizing it and finding some good trends or good stories out of it. So these are some of the challenges that she's been throwing at me, and I've thoroughly enjoyed working through them. So I would definitely recommend finding a mentor, and you could sign up for this program. I mean, I have the details at the end of this slide, but it's a great added advantage and a benefit to have if you're really trying to make this switch as an analyst. So that is definitely a must-have, according to me. I think that's about it. That's all about my journey. I'm still looking for good opportunities as an analyst, and alongside, I am working through all these mentioned programs that I'm doing. So, and I am open to looking at other opportunities as analysts. But yeah, in case you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter or on my email, and I'd be more than happy to share whatever little knowledge that I have. Thank you.
So much, Purva. Good stuff. And so let me also take a second to note, right, we're all still kind of learning Remo and getting used to it, but if you are in the chat area, there are 3 sections, right? There's like a group chat, there's a list of participants, or at least that's what I can see, and then there's a Q&A section. So if you guys have questions for the speakers, please, go into that Q&A section if it's specifically for them, and hopefully the speakers can hang around a moment and answer any of those questions that pop up. So again, thank you.
John, I'd like to make a little addition.
Sure.
Ella has also joined our Boston Tug, and she's joined all the way from England, and she's here to support me. So I'd like to say a big thank you to her.
All right, great. Thanks and welcome. All right, appreciate it. Up next, Sedale McCall, talking about defining Viz what you love. Take it away, Sedale.
Hopefully everyone can see that. Looks like I can. And if someone could chat really quickly that they can hear me, that'd be great. Perfect. All right. So the other cool, interesting thing that I recalled about Remo, I've only used it once, is that unfortunately I can no longer see the chat. So if there's an emergency, please just jump in. Otherwise, I'll check out the chat after this is over. But thanks everybody for coming in, and thanks to the Boston Tug for inviting me to talk. So this is a pretty quick chat on this idea of Viz what you love. It's a phrase we hear a lot, and the hope is that I can help you all figure out how to understand what it is. So to your Tableau journey. It's a quick talk, so it's a quick agenda. I will introduce myself a bit very quickly, just so if you haven't met me, that you get to know me a little bit. I'll talk a bit about the inspiration for how I got to this talk, and then finally, I'll spend the bulk of our time helping you all learn how to Viz what you love. Very quickly, I am the Director of Digital Insights and Intelligence at a company called Purple Strategies, which is a really fancy way of saying I answer this question for all of our clients on different industries, etc. So what are people saying about our business? What are people saying about our industry? Who are the key players in our group? What are they saying and why? I spent a lot of time over the past year during quarantine getting really involved in the Tableau community. So I've been a DC Tug member since 2019. I'm here in the DC area. Northern Virginia, I like to update now that the past couple of weeks have been a little weird for DC. But in June of last year, I got my first certification. So as Purva mentioned, I think certifications are an awesome way to build up your skills, and they're a great way to accelerate your Tableau journey. So I got my desktop specialist in June. Was lucky enough to be named a Tableau featured author in August, which was really amazing, awesome. And I'll share a link to my Tableau public at the end of this. I joined, I believe, in September. The time started getting fuzzy around that point, but joined the Community Equity Task Force, which is a task force designed to help advance diversity, not only in the community and representation in the community, but also within. So how do we think about making sure that the individuals have a platform, but also the data itself, there's data in the hands of other people. And so a quick shout out to that team, but also diversity in data, which is a hashtag that Autumn created along with one other individual's name escapes me, but who was also helping to do that work. And then lastly, I started Analytics Tug at the end of last year. The Analytics Tug is a tug that is mostly helping people use analytics. And we won't focus too much on Tableau Prep or Tableau Server, but it is going to be a great group for thinking about how we think about analytics, not just design, but how do we think about getting insights out of the tool. So that meeting will actually happen next week. So if you haven't already signed up for that as well. But one quick thing that I want to get into before the inspiration is when you see me on Twitter, and I'm not talking about Tableau, I'm most often talking about sports, talking about wine, wine during quarantine as well, talking about music. And so those are the things I really love to talk about and think about. But you'll see my vises are often about social justice, mental health, and healthcare. And so this hopefully illuminate why that is. So the inspiration for this talk was a talk that Zach Bowders gave back in July. He's also the host of the Data Plus Love podcast, which I believe has a new episode today. So you should check that out. But Zach talked about this idea of how he uses this concept of visiting what you love to create the business that he creates. He's a Tableau featured author. He was a winner of the Tableau Busy. And just if you haven't seen his profile, creates really fantastic visuals. The other thing that inspired this talk was also when you look at some of the challenges out there, I think our first talk, or Purva, I believe, brought up Viz for Social Good, Sports Viz Sunday, which Kate is leading here. When you think about Project Health Biz, there's all these bizes around topics that people are passionate about. And so I think this talk can help you find which of those might make the most sense. Obviously, you can do all of them, but hopefully this will give you a way to consider the ones that you might be a little more focused in and how you can get more involved in developing business for those folks. So I think the thing that's missing from the idea of Biz What You Love is that there's kind of two things that you have to consider, and the nexus between them I think is really, really helpful. So the first is what we love. So we think about the things that we love. So I talked about sports and wine, and that's a great start, but I think oftentimes what you'll realize is the things that you love, you may not be as interested in the data that's based on those things. And so that can create some of the tension between trying to biz the things that you love. On the other side, there are lots of things that you find interesting. We're all in the data community, so most data we find interesting for one reason or another. So on that, on that note, you kind of have the flip side where you're visiting things that you find interesting, but you may not be passionate enough about the topic to find something meaningful once you're done with that biz, or find something interesting out of it. And so to me, I think the middle, I call what you love to biz, which is kind of the opposite of visiting what you love. And I think that's where we find the things that we really want to talk about and the things that we'll be motivated to create business on an ongoing basis. So some quick examples here. Again, as I mentioned, you might love sports, you might love to shop, in food, but maybe you don't care so much about the revenue of Indian restaurants, or a particular metric in a sport that you like, to create business about it. On the flip side, COVID-19 has presented an embarrassment of riches in terms of data that we can mine and we can use and we can talk about, in terms of vaccinations, in terms of testing, in terms of cases. That's so interested in viral progressions that you want to visit about it. I think in the middle is where we kind of get into a really sweet spot. Unfortunately, Kevin Flaherty, one half of the Flaherty twins, had COVID-19 and created a viz about it. So while COVID generally might not be super interesting, what you may find, obviously, if you have it, it becomes a little bit more something interesting to you to talk about. Autumn created a viz around Black-owned restaurants. So whereas food might be something you love, when you add diversity, which might be something you're passionate about, you've now got a really cool viz. And if I haven't carried enough favor to the Boston Tug community, I added John Whitmer's viz on top-rated horror movies, which I found interesting. And also, when you think about going to the movies, that might be something that you love to do, but the genre horror might be something that you find interesting, and so it gives you something to communicate on an ongoing basis. So I think that hopefully that makes sense around how to add and augment, something that you can actually do on an ongoing basis. So I just wanted to give a few steps very quickly. First, find that middle section for you. And I think that comes from a few things. First, what is it that you love? I still think it's a good first step to think about what are the things that you love to do? What are the things you love to watch? But then there's a couple more questions I would ask. What's the thing that you want to know everything about? So as I mentioned, I got into wine actually really quickly. I got this book around wine and because I find it so interesting. So, right now I'm looking at South Africa, and you can see that, I'm trying to learn what regions are there in South Africa and what do we want to know about it. I'm interested in how the wind impacts the grapes, how the mountains impact the grapes, how the sun impact the grapes. And so I love getting really deep into that. So it makes it something really interesting for me. And then the second level of that is, what are the questions you when no one else seems to care? I call it the SVU problem. Like, everybody watches SVU, but there are some people that are, digging into the legal precedents that they're hearing or statutes that they're hearing or the whys behind that. If you find yourself doing that for something that you're interested in, that might be something to think about creating a viz for. And then ultimately you want to test these things. So, try and make a viz, see how you feel, and then go from there. One quick acknowledgement, though, is I do want to be clear, and Purva set this up perfectly, is that you do want to remember why you're creating these vizes. If you're doing something to build your portfolio because you want to become an analyst, or you want to build a skill in table calculations or LODs, if you want to learn about a particular topic, make sure that you're still doing those things, even if they may not be in a topic that you love to viz or a topic that you're super passionate about. Just make sure that you're still thinking about the ways that you want to build a career in addition to building your Tableau public profile. Wrapping up, viz classic advice. I think that to bring it up, in doing so, I think finding what you love, vizzing what you love, and loving what you viz are two slightly different things. And I hope that I've encouraged you to think about both of them when you start to create and find the things that you want to create on. But lastly, don't forget the goal that you have to the community and why you wanted to develop your Tableau vizzes. And lastly, please enjoy the journey. If you're not having fun every time you create a viz, then take this, go through this deck again, listen to Zach Bowder's thing, talk to people, find a mentor, because this shouldn't be something that's stressful. We all have jobs to stress us out plenty. So the Tableau community should be something fun and interesting. I'm always around to chat with you all, so feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Probably the only Sedale you'll see on LinkedIn, but also on Twitter at Sedale M, and my Tableau public profile is also just my name. So should be pretty easy to find me. I think, otherwise, thank you guys.
Sedale's a great guy. So I know he's always into those conversations that he spoke about. So yeah, reach out to him. Okay. So if you guys attended TC 20-ish, right? They have a thing called the Vizzies, right? The Vizzy Awards. And there's one award called the Most Technically Sound. And so, if you saw that list of nominees during it, there were some incredible people, right? You had Brian Moore, you had Dustin Cabral. For some unknown reason, you had me on that list. But the guy that took that award home is our next speaker. So Jim Dehner is a Tableau ambassador, Vizzy winner, and owner at Market Analytics. So he's going to take it over and talk about his top 5 building blocks on the journey from Excel to Tableau. Jim, it's all yours.
Thank you, John. I might have jumped in a little too soon there. I hope everybody can see my screen and hear me.
Yes, great.
Okay, great. So that great presentation. And I want to thank you people in Boston for allowing me to speak today. I'm a real admirer of this user group because you guys do a really, really fine job. Today, we're going to take a look at my own background and my experience in going from an Excel background and an Access background to learning Tableau. First, just a little bit about me. I live in Nashville, Tennessee. Actually, I live about 30 miles outside of Nashville. And I am not a data scientist. I am not an IT person. I'm an engineer, and I have a business degree to go along with that. Most of my professional experience has been in consumer products as a product manager and a business manager. About 5 years ago, a client that I had came to me and said they were going to Tableau for reporting purposes, and they wanted me to learn Tableau. And that was my introduction to the platform. I didn't really come from that background at all. As John mentioned, I am one of the Tableau Forum ambassadors. This is actually my fourth year as a Tableau ambassador. I may have run into you, some of you, out on the forum. You may have had questions I may have been able to answer. Along the way, I've had some people ask me, they said, look, my background is kind of like yours. My background is not with databases. It's really not with being a data scientist. My background's more Excel and its Access. And did you have, going along the way, when you started learning how to use Tableau, did you have some experiences that you could share? And I said to him, yeah, I had some experiences. To be honest with you, when I first started, it was a little difficult. I had a tough time making that transition. And now as I look back, there's 5 things, I've referred to them as the building blocks or fundamentals. These were 5 things that I really had to understand before I felt comfortable using Tableau and being able to use it to answer not just to answer a lot of questions, but be able to use it for my own purposes also and for my clients' purposes. The first of those has to do with the data structure and the connectivity. Now, I grew up in a household, and certainly when my children were younger, there was always a calendar on the refrigerator door. And I could look across the columns of that calendar, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and I could look down the rows and I could see in cell C4 next Wednesday, I'd have a dentist appointment. So I felt very comfortable with Excel. I felt very comfortable knowing that there's information in a cell, and I could look to a column header or row header, and it would kind of give me an idea of what that data represented. When we first got to Tableau, as you all know, Tableau prefers a narrow format. They don't want a wide format. They want a narrow format and a tall format, and that's totally different. So whenever I get a question, and I open up a data set out on the forum, and I see a data set that looks like this, I see measures that look like this, pretty good indication that that data looks like that calendar on my refrigerator, that it's short and it's wide. Now we know we can convert this data by just pivoting it. And once we pivot it, and I've got to change this back to dates. Once we pivot it, we can bring up values. These are sales values, and we've got sales by date by customer. And this is great. I felt like, oh, I was able to take my first Excel spreadsheet and get it into Tableau. Then I remembered that, hey, I want the quantities that went along with this. And what I would do in Excel is I keep my quantities on a separate spreadsheet. I just write a VLOOKUP, and I do a VLOOKUP, and I pull data from the second sheet out of the first sheet, and everybody was happy. Well, I went out and I looked under the calculations, and there's no VLOOKUP. And I had to find out that no, to do that sort of thing with Tableau, you actually go through a join between the 2 data sets. And that's not difficult to do. We take the data set, and this is data that we were just looking at, and we bring a file to it that's got our quantity data in it. Okay, and now we see our quantity data has been added, and Tableau has created a relationship between the customers in one data set and the customers in the other data set. Well, we needed that, obviously, but we also need to add dates. Okay, so we added, well, the pivot field names are now dates in both fields. Oops. And now we can go back to that data set. Okay, we can expand it out. And we can put in our sales values and we can put in our quantity values. So using a join is very similar to VLOOKUP. I felt very comfortable doing that until the end of the month came about. And at the end of the month, we got a new data set. And that new data set had to be connected to, there we go. We had to connect that new data set. And what I would do typically is, I've got a little bit of a background in Access. What I would do typically is I'd bring that data into Access, and I'd append the two data sets together. Well, once again, there's no append command inside Tableau, and you would do that with a union. Okay, and you can create a union. It's not difficult to create a union. We're going to take a look at that same data set. Okay, and I want to union the 2020 data to it, so I can edit the union, bring in the 2020 data, and when we do that, you'll see that there's a table name field here, and that table name now includes the 2019 data and it contains the 2020 data. And as long as we're here, we're going to bring in the other data set, the quantity data set, and join those together just like we did before. There we're going to have date connected to date, and customer connected to customer. Okay, and we can just add our sales values, and we can add our quantity values, and now our data set is joined together properly. I felt really good about that. But if we stop to think about unions and joins for just a second, they can be much, much more complex than what we've shown here today. But essentially, they're doing the same thing. When you're doing a join, you're adding like columns of data in your data set. When you're doing a union, you're appending data together. The join clauses are what tell Tableau how you want those data's connected, what fields you want to connect together. And it's going to take some practice and you're going to have to work at it, but that's the basics behind how you connect data together. There's one other type of data that we have to deal with, and that's data that's coming from different data sources, or data that's at different levels of aggregation. Like maybe you've got some data that's at a year level and some data that's at a month level. Well, those data, connecting those data is done with a blend or data blending. A couple things you really need to remember about blending data. First of all, the blended data always results in an aggregation. And that aggregation takes place at the level of the link, or on the new terminology, the relationship between the two data sets. And also remember that it does limit some of the functionality that you have in Tableau. Like you won't be able to use LOD equations or readily filter across the data sets. I got a couple data sets here. First, I've got my sales data, and it's at the date and category level. And I got my goals data, and here the goals are only 2018, 2019. If I blend the two of them together, I bring them together, the first data source the first data that I bring to the canvas identifies the primary data source, and here it's the sales data. The goals data, the secondary data source, is blended to the primary, and it's aggregated at the level of the link. But this data is not what we wanted to see. We had different goals for 2018 and 2019. Well, we can come over and we can edit the blend relationship, and if we look at the sales data being the primary and the goal data being the secondary, we can see that it's linked at category, but we also need to add a link at the year level. Okay, and when we do that, you can see that the values have now changed, so we've got different goals in 2018 and 2019. So we've got these three ways of connecting data. You're going to have to practice with them. You're going to have to work with them. But those are the basis for how you connect data together. I want to go over now to talk about the order of operation. And if there's only one thing you remember about today's discussion, the most important thing I'd like you to remember is that the order of operation, most of the errors that we see in using Tableau and creating business in Tableau come from a misunderstanding of the order of operation, things being applied in a bad order. The order of operation is nothing more than the sequence that Tableau uses when it creates your individual worksheet. You think about where you started. You started by bringing in a data set into Tableau. It could be a flat file like an Excel file or several Excel files that you connected together, or it could come from a database. You bring that data into Tableau, and then for each one of your worksheets, you're going to take a subset of that data and you're going to create a table that underlies that worksheet. We call it the underlying table, or we call it the data table for the worksheet, but it's a subset of the total data set. And you start by creating the structure of that table by placing dimensions on the rows and the columns, or like the headers on your Excel spreadsheet, and both on the rows and the columns in your Excel spreadsheet. And then you apply filters, and that forms the structure for that data table. Once that structure is created, you then load that data table with values. You massage those values. You do some calculations with those values. Do some create some grand totals and the like, and then you decide what you want your business to look like. Is it going to be a line chart? Is it going to be a bar chart? Maybe even the dreaded pie chart. Well, let's take a look at the order of operation. And I know some people look at 8 steps. I like to look at 10 steps in the order of operation, but I break them down into 3 groups. The first group are extract filters and data source filters, and they operate at the workbook level. Everything else operates at the worksheet level. So in the first 2 steps, if you have a very large data set, you can use the first 2 steps to filter out some of that data, either using an extract filter or a data source filter. And as you all know, if you have less data in your workbook, the performance is going to improve. So they're primarily there for improving the performance of your workbook. The next 3 steps: context filters, creating sets, fixed LODs, and top N, and dimension filters create that data, create the structure of that data table on that worksheet. That's what we were talking about before. And then the last 5 steps add the values into the data table. You perform calculations with those. You can apply some filters to measures, do totals, and the last step is to do table calculations. I want to take a look at the first 3 steps, because this is where the use of context filters and how it applies to fixed LODs and top N is one of the most frequent errors that we'll see out on the forum. I'm going to use a very simple example here. I've got this simple data set. I've got 2 different types of produce. I've got fruits and vegetables. I've got several different types of fruit or vegetables itself. Doing a very simple calculation. All we're going to do is we're going to take the price times the quantity to create the total. And then I'm going to create an LOD, and I'm going to open up the LOD. And this is just a very simple LOD that's going to take a look at this, and it's going to say, hey, at the type level, fixed type, I want the total, I want the sum of the total cost. And you can see here that, sure enough, at the type is fruit, the total is $5.75, and my LOD is calculated, and it is the same value. Now I want to come back and I want to take bananas out. I want to filter bananas out. And we have produce in context. So produce is sitting in context. So when I apply a filter to produce, it's going to filter bananas out before the LOD is calculated. So now for fruit, the total is $3.75. If I didn't want to filter out bananas before the LOD was calculated, I'd remove it from context, and you can see the value is $5.75. Very often we'll get a question out on the forum. It usually starts out as, I'd like to know what the formula is that ignores filters. And I want to say, there aren't any formulas that ignore filters. You, as the developer of the viz, decide when you want filters applied. If you want the filter applied before the LOD is calculated, put it in context. If you want it filtered after the LOD is applied, put it in as a dimension filter. Similarly, if you're looking at sets or you're looking at top end, they're affected by the context filter also. Same data set, I just added a set, and I used the top end option on set to limit to the top three. So you can see the top three values are apples, bananas, and green beans. I'm going to hide the outset just to make it easier to see what's going on. And once again, I'm going to come back and filter bananas out. Produce is in context. So when I filter out bananas aren't there. I get three values. I get apples, green beans, and spinach because we filtered out bananas. If I had not removed them from context, I would only get two values. And this is another cause for confusion and another list of questions we get. I had my filter set for top end. I wanted 5 values and I only see 2 values. Why am I only seeing 2 values when I wanted to see 5 values? Well, it goes back to the application when and what is in the context and what is not in the context. Okay. I want to go to the next topic now. And every system has its own language. And Tableau has its own language, and Excel has their own language, and an awful lot of the commands from one to the other look the same, but they really operate totally differently. When you write a formula in Excel, you're writing a formula that is sitting in a cell, and if you want to apply that formula elsewhere, you copy that cell, you copy that formula, and then you place it along a row or down, down a column, so that the formula applies to all the cells. Well, in Tableau, we're working with dimensions, and when you write a calculation using a dimension, it's kind of like writing a cell format and then copy it down the entire column. Okay, but it's a totally different concept there. Now, even today, whenever I write a calculation, I use the calculation wizard. If you're not familiar with it, please become familiar with it and use it. It's going to save you a lot of trouble and make things a whole lot easier for you. And if you're familiar with Excel and maybe using some of the advanced Excel, this frame ought to look fairly familiar. This is the calculation wizard. There's a drop down at top where each calculation is grouped together, and we can limit the amount of calculations we see at any one time. This pane over on the right tells you what the calculation is, what the arguments are, and how to use it. And most importantly, at least for me, is this area down here is the syntax checker, and it checks to see if the calculation is valid. Very often we'll get a question and say, well, I don't understand it. My equation is valid or my formula is valid, but I got the wrong answer. It's checking syntax, it's not checking your logic. Let's just see how you would use this. I can go to this caret right here, open it up, create a calculated field, and the wizard opens up. Now, if I wanted to calculate the average selling price, I could write something like sum of price. I'm going to make this larger so you can see it. Sum of price divided by quantity. Okay, and you see auto suggest comes up and it tells us, well, man, that's probably what you want. And this one's also going to come back and it's going to say, hey, you got an error. The calculation contains an error, and the error is an aggregation error. You can't mix aggregates and non-aggregates in the same expression. This little squiggly red line is going to tell you about where the error is. Now this brings out another difference between Excel and Tableau, is that in any calculation, all the dimensions or all the measures have to be aggregated to the same level. So this error is simple. And sure enough, we've solved the error. Now, you're going to have a lot of experience, a lot of work using the calculation wizard. It will become your friend, and very quickly you'll understand what each of those errors mean. We'll see a couple more of them here as we go on. That takes us to the fourth building block, and that's calculations, and that's the backbone of everything that we do here when you're using Tableau when you're customizing Tableau to create the business the way that you want it to work. Looks like a lot of calculations out there, but if you think about it, there's only four types of calculations, four basic types of calculations. There's a simple calculation like we just saw, where we were calculating the average selling price as just, the sum of sales divided by the sum of quantities. We're just doing arithmetic, okay? Also in that simple calculation are the if statements. And if you write SQL, which I do not, if you write SQL, this looks kind of familiar. And this sequence just really is that if this condition is met, if the first condition is met, then perform this calculation. If it's not, then perform this other calculation and end. Date functions are the second type. Date functions work with real dates. They can return an actual date, or they can return a reference to the date, or you can use date math. LOD expressions, which I dearly love, I use, I overuse, I abuse, I'm guilty of all of those. And I love them because they allow you to create additional layers in your data set. And the fact that that layer exists, but the LOD itself is not calculated, means I can use it in any other type of formula. And then for people with an Excel background, window calculations, table calculations ought to feel real familiar, because those are calculations that are operating on that table that underlies the biz. And even though it doesn't really look like an Excel spreadsheet, it kind of feels like an Excel spreadsheet when you're doing table calculations. We're going to take a look at a simple calculation. We've already seen one simple calculation. So what I'd like to show you is an example of a conditional statement. And let's say you just got a new vice president of sales, and of course he wants to make some changes. So he doesn't want to call his regions east, west, central, and south. He wants to call them coastal and middle and south. So you could write an if statement that started out if region equals east, or, and you can use or and as conjunctions, and now you can use in also, or the region equals west, then call it coastal. If it's not east or west, else if it's something else, if the region equals central, call it middle, else call it south. Everything else just call south. And that's all there is to writing a conditional statement. And we can filter by it, we can pull out the other regions, and now we've reassigned his region names. Date calculations are a lot of fun. Date calculations work with real dates. The data type is either a date or it's date time. We get a lot of questions. People come in and I said, well, I've got month in my data set and it doesn't work in the date calculation. Well, they've got month as a string in the data set. Now it has to be a date or it has to be a date time. I want to take a look at this first example. And with that, let's take a look at all the date functions that are available, because there's quite a few of them. This is an example of a date calculation that returns a reference to the date itself. Date part is going to return the integer value that represents the order date, in this case, at the level of the date that you want to see. Now, that date part could be year, quarter, month, day, hour, minute, second, a lot of options there. And it's going to return an integer value that represents the truncated value at that level. Okay? So we take a look at date part. Date part we return a value of 1 to 12 for the months. And that's very useful when you're doing calculations with the data. And you want to look month over month, for example. Date name, on the other hand, is going to return text. And date name is very useful when you want to create labels. When you want to put labels on things, date name would be a good example. Well, you need to work with the date functions to understand how some of the other ones work. I want to take a look at date trunc, because date trunc returns a date. And date trunc is, I use date trunc an awful lot because date trunc actually returns the first date, and it's actually date and time. So it's the first date at midnight, the first date of the period that you've identified in the level of the date that you're looking at. So here, date trunc quarter is going to return January 1st for the months January, February, March, the first quarter. Second quarter is April, third quarter is July, and the fourth quarter is October. It's a great function to use whenever you're doing year over year or period over period calculations. Date trunc is my go-to for that type of calculation. But there's one other thing we can do with dates, and we can do date math. Here we wanted to look how long does it take to ship an order. So we're going to take the date difference in days between the order date and the ship date. And that simply calculates how many days that it takes to ship an order. We can bring it to the viz, average it, and so we can look here at the average days to ship. In January were 4.11, and in December were 4.04. But you can do date math. Okay. That's going to take us over to LOD expressions. And as I said before, LOD expressions are my absolute favorite because it allows you to create virtual layers in your data set. They're not back in your data source. Nothing gets printed back in your data source, but that's data, that's a layer in your data set that you can use in your workbook. You think about the data that you loaded into the book at the lowest level. Maybe it came out of your ERP system and it represented a sales invoice and you were looking at units and dollars at the SKU level. That lowest level you can think of as the bottom of a pyramid. Okay, it's kind of like the grain of the data at the lowest level. If we were to sum all the data and go all the way up to the top of the pyramid and you had one number for the total sales, that would be the absolute max in the data set, or the total in the max in the data set. Well, what LOD expressions allow you to do is to decide where you want to add additional layers in the data, aggregate the data up to that level, and save it so you can use it later. But it's not really an aggregate in itself. So you can take that LOD and you can use it elsewhere, and you can put it in any type of expression. I just want to show you how you could read an LOD, and I'm going to open this up again, and we're going to create a calculation. The wizard opens up again, and we can start by writing fixed. And the first thing we see is that we get a squiggly bracket. That's a signal to Tableau that it's going to see a LOD expression. The LOD type is fixed. And I just want to take price and quantity and sum of total cost. Okay. The way you'd read this in words, you would say, hey, take every combination, take the combinations of price and quantity, and for each one of those combinations, sum total cost, and save that so I can use it later. Okay? So you've created a fixed LOD. And like I've said before, that's creating another layer in that pyramid. That layer is now higher than the lowest level in the data set itself. Okay. I want to take a look at table calculations, and then we're going to take a look at how we can combine these things together. Coming from Excel, table calculations felt really comfortable. I was working on a table. I was going to cross the table, down the table. This felt really good. But we have a different terminology in Tableau. We talk about scope and direction. Scope is how much of the table the calculation is going to be applied to at one time. Direction is, are we going across the table or are we going down the table? Creating table calculations is really very easy. We can put our sales in here. I can open up this caret, come down and do a quick table calculation, and there's a whole lot to choose from. These are already predefined for us. We're going to take percent of sales, and Tableau has created the percent of sales across the years. Not what we wanted, but that's the default. The default is to go across. So we can open up this caret again and say, now I want to go down the table, and sure enough, now we've got the percent of sales by month, which we really wanted. Now, if we wanted to use this over and over again, we can pull this off, and you see it just opened up what it called calculation 2. We can open up calculation 2. We can rename it and save it so we can use it, but it also gives you the formula that Tableau used to create that percent of sales. We find this very useful once you start writing your own table calculations. It gives you a starting point, and then you can work from there. I do it all the time. Okay. I want to take a look at nesting LOD expressions inside a table calculation. I told you before, LOD expressions can be used anywhere. Now, we have users, very frequent requests from users is, I want to rank my sales by subcategory, and I want to look at my market, and then I want to see how that varies over a number of years. Okay. The way you'd go about something like that is you start with an LOD expression, and this is the one we're using here, and I'm going to read it to you again in words, that says, hey, take all the combinations of segment, subcategory, and year of order date, and at that level, for each one of those intersections, sum the sales. Important to know a couple things. We're going to sum the sales, and we're going to have the data stored as this name here, LOD seg sub cat sales. Okay. Now I want to use that in a ranking function. Okay. And a ranking function is a table calculation. Let's take a look at some table calculations here. Okay. There's a full list of table calculations that are available to you. I like to use rank unique. That LOD expression, and notice it has to be some LOD expression, it has to be aggregated, because table calculations are always an aggregate. They're always an aggregate. So I want to sum the LOD expression descending. Okay. And I'm going to show those values. And I'm just going to hide these other values. We still have to keep them in the table, but I just want to hide them so that we can see the rank. And sure enough, Tableau is calculating the sales across. We knew it was going to do that. Open up the caret again, go to Edit Table Calculation, and a window is going to open up. Now this is going to help us decide how we want the scope and the direction of that table calculation applied. As long as this is checked off, as long as the calculation assistant is checked off, the highlight is going to show you the scope and the direction. So this is going across the table. We know that we want data at the subcategory level. Well, when we did that, we got the entire table all at once. Well, that's not really what we want. We want to take a look at the segment level, but we're still getting data that doesn't make a whole lot of sense until we look over here and we say we can restart that every year. Now that's beginning to look like what we wanted to see. We wanted to see the rank of each subcategory in each segment in each year. And we can see here that in phones, for example, in 2016, they were first in the consumer segment, corporate segment, third in home office. And by 2019, that had changed. Corporate was fourth and home office was first. Calculations take a lot of practice. My advice to you with calculations is work with a small data set. Make yourself a 3x4 data set. Practice LODs with a 3x4 data set so you can do the math on, with a pencil and say, hey, something's not working right. Keep working with them until you feel comfortable with them, but they do take practice. That brings us to the last topic, and that's what I call the toolkit. And the toolkit contains filters, sets, and parameters that allow the user or you to change the visual that you're looking at, to modify the visual. Okay. I want to take a look at filters first. We've already talked about dimension filters. They change the structure of the data table. Measure filters are applied to the values that are in that data table. We all know how to use dimension filters. They're very easy to use. No longer have office supplies in the data table in this viz now. I want to spend more time on the measure filters because there's a couple of different ways that measure filters are applied. This is a very simple data set that we look at. I've got 2 different product lines. I've got a couple of different products in each line, some customers and some colors to go along with it. Now, if I want to filter on quantity, as I bring quantity to the filter shelf, this window opens up. And this window gives you the opportunity to decide how you want that filter applied. This top value that says all values probably really should say at the row level in the viz that you're working on the row level of that table. Let's just take that and say, hey, I want values less than 15, between 1 and 15. And we can apply the filter. No value there is greater than 15. We can also use an aggregation factor, any of these, and there are many available to you, to aggregate the data and filter it based on an aggregation. Let's just take a look at average. We're going to filter on the average, less than 15. And we filter out everything that's less than 15. And you say, hey, but Jim, wait a minute. These are greater than 15. That's because we're summing the quantity. And if we were to look at the average, you'd see that there's nothing less than 15. Filters take data out of the data table. Sets keep all the data in the data table, but it reclassifies that data into 2 groups, the in set and the out. All the data is still available. You can use it for comparison purposes. For the last 2 years, set actions have been available. This last year, we also introduced a way of using a drop-down, very similar to a filter, to control what data is in and what data is not in the set. A very quick set example, created a set on a subcategory. All you have to do is create set, boom, and it will create a set for you. I created the set. We've got some items in the set. The blue text, or the blue color, is what's in the set. The gray color is what's out of the text. You can also have it show the actual members of the set. But now, as we change what's in the set, you can see the values change also. Sets can also be used in other calculations. We can use this, for example, in a table calculation where we look at the percent of total. And this would be one that we want to do going across the table. So now we're looking at the share of these values. Now we're taking a look at the share of what's in the set in the central consumer region compared to everything that's sold in the central consumer region. Sets are very powerful and they're very, very useful. Now the last element of the toolbox are parameters. Parameters are much maligned. Parameters are also very, very useful. It is the other way that a user can put a value into Tableau. The first way being through the data source. But there's some rules around parameters that you have to understand. First of all, they're single valued. At least today, they're single valued, okay? Second, they're static until they're manually changed by the user. You either change it with a parameter action or change it with a dropdown. They're global. The value is the same throughout the entire workbook. But now here's the most important part. They don't do anything. They don't do anything until they're used in a calculation or a filter. The parameter is just a value. It's the calculation or the filter that actually does the work. So when you create a parameter, here I created a parameter on region. Just create a parameter. And when you create the parameter that I created on region, looks like this. It's just a listing of the values that are in that dimension. For over a year now, we've been able to dynamically update that list, checking off that value, identifying where we want the data to come from, and I've got a number of different options out there. And when the value opens, you can set it to a specific value, and then you can determine that value. The current value is where it was last set, or you can write a formula, a calculation that would identify what value you wanted to go to. Once you've created the parameter, step 2 is to show the parameter. You have to show it so you can change the parameter. And then step 3 is you have to use it in a calculation or a filter. And I've got a, there we go. And this is just a very simple true-false filter. It just says if the region equals the parameter, return a true. If not, return a false. And that's all there is to it. And now we can change the value of the parameter and the data will change accordingly. Okay, well, that sort of wraps it up. Those are the 5 basic functions that I needed to understand to really feel comfortable using Tableau. Now, I told you I was an engineer. If any of you have ever studied physics or mechanics, you probably heard of Archimedes. Archimedes lived in the 3rd century BC, and Archimedes had a principle that there were 5 basic machines or 5 basic tools, and there were things like the lever, the pulley, the inclined plane, really basic stuff. And his principle goes that any more complex machine can be made of a combination of those 6. Well, for me, that's kind of what these 5 represent. Now, for you, you might have a different set of 5, or you might have a different set, different numbers altogether. But for me, these 5 were really necessary for me to understand before I could go to do more advanced or more complex calculation. And this is just something I did a number of years ago. But it kind of incorporates everything we were talking about. We've got a year-over-year % growth calculation. We've got a year-to-date and a prior year-to-date sales calculation. These involve date calculations, the LOD expressions. The starting date is driven by a parameter. The parameter value is controlled through a parameter action. And this top ribbon, I've set this to, this top ribbon sets that parameter value. And I've set it on hover, and you can see how okay. Over here, this map of the US, actually a value picker also. It's tied to a set that's also built into these year-to-date and year-over-year growth calculations. And because we're out here on the East Coast, we're going to take a look at come on, there you go. We can take a look at what's in the set, the Eastern states, and the Western states are out of the set. So now these values will represent those Eastern states. And the market segment is also connected to a set, and we can change the value according to that. But they're all based on those same 5 basic principles. I want to thank you for your time. The workbook that we use today, Tableau public site, you can download it. Anything on my public site is available to download. There's a lot of how-to information out there. A written explanation of what we went through can be found out on my blog, and it's the top 5 things you really need to know. Thank you very much. I'm going to stop sharing the screen now. Turn it back to John.
All right, perfect, Jim. And I hope you guys realize treasure trove of great information that we just got from Jim. So thank you so much for your time. Thanks to all the presenters. None of these guys get paid, right? They're here because they love Tableau and they love the community. So we really appreciate you guys coming out and sharing all your knowledge. And hopefully some of you can stick around a little bit. So let me in here and share my screen. Okay, so let the networking begin. When I start off the presentation bit, for those of you who came in a few minutes late, you may not be aware of this, but Remo has sort of like a conference room feel to it with all of these tables and chairs around them, 2 seats, 4 seats, 6 seats. So you're all placed at a table. And so this floor plan has 100 seats. We've got over 100 people. So there's now 2 floors worth of this. Yeah, I know, incredible turnout. So if you don't see a lot of people, you might be on the 2nd floor. So, they're on the left side, there's a navigation to go down to the 1st floor, hop around. And all you have to do is, you find a table, you'll see the people that are sitting at it. Just double click on one of the empty blue seats and, you'll hop in, say hello, bounce around. So you guys know how to network. I won't go on and on. But so for all of the Boston Tug, thank you all so much, the presenters, the attendees. We appreciate everybody coming out and taking time, and can't wait to meet you guys. So until next time, thanks everyone, and I will stop and I'll see you guys in the networking.